Bulgaria at a bride market. This is the biggest annual celebration of the Roma clan, the Kalaiji. And here, young Kalihi girls are sold by their family. Celebration of the Roma clan bride market. This is the biggest annual celebration of the Roma clan, the Kalaiji. And here, young Kalihi girls are sold by their families to suitors who bid on them. Are you asking me how much money I am? We're here to find out why these markets are happening and how the young brides feel about being sold off. What the fuck? You shot me!
The 18,000-strong Kalaiji clan is a subgroup of the Roma people who face constant prejudice and exclusion across Europe. Based in the region of Thrace in central Bulgaria, they have drawn international attention for their controversial annual bride market. Women openly being sold like property in a European country in 2016 seems ludicrous. I want to explore how something that sounds so medieval can exist within modern society. I'm meeting with a Kalaiji family with 2 daughters.
I think this is winning this.
To see how they prepare for the bride market.
Да, здравейте. Заповядайте. Здрасти. Milan. Peppa.
Peppa is 25 and Rossi 19.
Milan, nice to meet you. How are you?
I get a warm welcome from their mom Vera. Then Peppa offers to give me a tour of the house.
Ами, общо сме 7. Аз, сестра ми, майка ми, баща ми, малкият ми брат, по-големият ми брат с жена си и дъщеричката ми. Тук тази стая сама си сестра ми. Ето тук спим двете на спалнята, а там са ни животните. Oh, hello! He's scared. He wants his mommy.
There's only 2 bedrooms to share between all 8 of them, and the living room doubles up as a bedroom for the parents.
Заповядайте да са почерпи.
Като служение на буква от наши трябва да знае да готви, да доставя на свекара, на свекървата.
No matter where you go in the world, the family photos always seem to come out.
Това е майка ми. This is you. Преди 20 преди да се ожени.
Vera was sold to their dad, Christo, at a bride market. I want to know how the family feels about the prospect of Peppa and Rossi also being sold in a couple of days.
Важно е за наша нация, защото ние сме затворена нация. Ти християни, дай повече. Момите, които са женят за първи път, трябва да са си девствени.
Много е важно, защото се дават много пари. Просто ако не е момата девствена, като дадеш, започват да ти казват за нас долни, курви, мъсти, такива. Значи сме изпаднали.
I'm taken aback by how matter-of-fact they all are about the possibility of being sold off.
Saturday is the big bride market. Have you already found some suitable men for your daughters?
Ние намерихме много, но те не харесват.
Да, които искаме, те ако кажат, да, тогава не искаме и така става конфликт.
Unsurprisingly, Vera and her daughters don't have the same taste in men. Vera tells me there are strict rules surrounding Kalaiji girls' contact with guys. But Peppa and Rossi have found the loophole.
So the girls are showing me the guys they talk to on social media. You're like a million times hotter. There's this one boy I think is really cute right now. No? No? What kind of voice do you like? Oh my god! That's terrifying! Jesus! You would kiss him?
Rossi has her eye on one guy in particular.
Will he be at the market?
Да.
So his parents want to ask for your hand?
Да. И моите искат да ме дават сам.
I ask if they're ever allowed to spend time alone with their potential future husbands.
Целувки, преградки или насамете излизаме, като искат да навидят, идват в нас в къщи. Тук
They may not have the freedoms that I take for granted, but they are allowed to spend big on clothes to impress the opposite sex.
Ето тези са от интернет. Тези обувки.
това е тяхната ми рокля.
Тази също от интернета.
И не е за обикновен ден просто на пазара да излезеш с нея.
But even with all these clothes, the girls want to hit the shops to make sure they turn heads on the big day.
Няма, искам да е цялата пантерина самата рокля.
You go to the market, how important is the dress? What are the things that will make you get a higher price?
Да имаш златни накъде, обувките да са стилни с роклята в тон. Някои, които са облечени по-така, не ги харесват. Колкото сме по-възпитани, по-интелигентни, семейството ни е по-добро, толкова повече цената се вдига. Имаше някой момиче над 20, казаха става. Майко, виждам,
Роклята си бъде така.
бялата рокличка ти няса. Като това е на и това е
Rossi's outfit costs almost an average Kaiji weekly salary, but Vera considers it an investment into her daughter's future.
Try this.
Then it was my turn to try on some looks.
Wow.
I grabbed the opportunity to ask if they ever dream of a different life than that of a housewife.
Банкер.
Does anything stand in the way for you to fulfill these dreams?
Ами да, традицията. Традицията ми позволява и градния път някакъв по-старовременен да пази традиция и така нататък. Няма да се съглася, че във ми не е на работа. Той ще каже, че си стоя вкъщи, гледай си деца.
Would you like to study and go to school?
Да. Разбира се, кой не иска да се изпълни мечтата.
Only 10% of Bulgarian Roma women have secondary education, and 1 in 5 are illiterate. With all the restrictions imposed on girls to preserve Kalaiji tradition, I want to find out what their social life is actually like.
Отиваме при моите братовчетки. Сега ще ме запозная с тях. Това е Нима. Запознай се. Това е Пепа. Това са близнаците. Те е по-малката сестричка.
The twins Peppa and Nima are 19 and Vera only 16. I'm curious to know what the girls think is their most highly prized asset as a potential bride.
I could never marry a guy if I haven't at least tried to sleep with him before.
А пък при нас никога не бихме се преспали с момче преди да случи. Това е голям срам за семейството и за всички рода.
Do you think that's fair?
Не.
How do you feel about the bride market?
И става страшничко. Защото е възможно някой път родителите да дадат момичето на това момче, което има повече пари, а другото да речем малко по-бедничко, път тя го обича.
Is that a fear?
Да. А има случаи, в които момичето и момчето се искат, обичат се, обаче ако момичето е по-чернооко, а момчето, те са възможни, богати са родителите на момчето, те няма да искат за снаха момичето. Ще искат по-красиво. С сини очи.
Being married off to an older rich man is a legit fear. I want to chat to Peppa, who at 25 is already old in Kalaiji terms. The majority of girls marry between 13 and 20.
Do you feel the pressure on you now with this market coming up that you have to find a husband?
Да, все пак е сложно, защото тук съм живяла 25 години. Не знам дали ще мога да свикна там, където ще отида. Това не е много трудно. Ама е страх да не сгреша, колкото се може да избера най-добрия вариант за мен.
I haven't even married anyone yet. I'm 33, so I can't.
Peppa is lucky as her parents are patient and want her to find Mr. Right. It's time to try some outfits for the bride market.
What do you usually do when you get together?
Говорим с ним, правим снимки, качваме ги във Фейсбук, слушаме музика, танцуваме преди талко.
Do you know Kim Kardashian, the queen of the selfies? I'll show you. So when you do that face, you do.
The girls seem caught between conforming to a traditional culture, but also wanting to embrace modern life. Investing in 2 daughters at marrying age must be expensive, so I asked their father, Krista, to tell me about the family business.
Значи, Калайджи като Калайджи са ми съдвики, оттам ми остава фамилията и името Калайджи. Отпреди се работили така. Обаче, преди на времето дори сме печелили много пари от този занят. Сега е трудно много. Няма работа. Може би след 30-40 години загуби този занят.
Sheep goods from China are affecting the once valued Kalaiji trade. I'm starting to see why a high bride price has become even more important. It's the night before the bride market, and Vera's invited the extended family over for a party.
Нощно време не отиват на дискотека. А за дискотека младите се събират тук към една стая и играят, танцуват. Вече да се почерпат, но имат придружители. Гледайте музика на зала.
So being in a community makeover, it's a pretty interesting experience, just how they celebrate. They dress up and they take lots of photos and they put it all up on Facebook to sort of show how much of a fun time they're having. But the reality is that they can't even leave their house and everyone around is just a family.
It's the morning of the bride market, but before we go, I've arranged to meet the girl who's rebelling against her family's desire to sell her off.
14 годишни. 8000 бяха решени да ме дадат нашите, обаче аз тогава бях настояли от училище да ме женят. Но аз взех да плача, казах, не, няма. И аз съм била и те избягах, скрих се и не съм отишла с наха.
Why would they take you out from school so early?
Да не се хванат някои гаджи от училище, да не вземат да избягат с него. Се отракваме, искаме и по-модерен живот, искаме дискотека, барче, заведения, гаджи, с кола. Тия традиции да се женим за калайджи, да сме действени. Искаме да сме като другите момичета, като абсолютно където влизат. И затова нас спират, затварят вкъщи и само на пазар.
Would you like to study and have you been able to go to school?
Аз бих искала да продължа с ученето си. Един ден бизнес дама, уважаема, мечтата ми е тази, но някъде. Но трябва да се откажа от семейството ми.
Dusty has a boyfriend who's not Kalaiji. I asked what would happen if her parents found out.
Се ме оженят на сила за калайджия, след като аз няма да съм съгласна. И няма да ме пуснат вече да излизам с него. Преди да се продават. Мисля, че това са пълни глупости, живелици. Good morning.
How are you feeling today?
Напрегнати заради пазара.
Да се направим много хубави.
То трябва и аз и децата да изглеждаме добре, да сме харесани.
Колко подобно да видим такива малки кучи и помада и се слагам на лицето и стоим много бял.
How
По принцип, по-възрастните хора, като видят някой по-малени момичета така, по този начин много ги харесват.
What's the average bride price?
5-600. Ами, за Пепа вече ми дадаха около 6, ама не съм ме дала. А за Росата ми дават много повече. Радвам се, като ми дават много пари, значи са хубави, харесате.
Have the markets changed from when you were younger?
Да, много. Да слушам майка си, баща си, където кажат те, това момче да взема, ама за напред са заобичали и да живее.
Вече съм готова, отивам на пазара.
The bride market is held a 20-minute drive away in Stara Zagora, in a big parking lot where some 2,000 Kalaiji were getting the party started. Most of the girls eligible to be bid on at the market are 13 to 20 years old.
Защо дойдохме така, като гледам, надявам се да се скараме добре. Супер е!
And the bidding has already begun.
The girls are getting loads of attention. The suitors are here, and everyone's checking each other out.
Peppa and Rossi seem excited. It hits me that this is the one time a year they can hang out with so many guys.
Is that new guy that you like? The kind of. Yeah, it's not bad. Not bad.
He just flanks her. I wonder if he's put off by her crew. I get the hint and go off and check out the atmosphere.
How do you flirt? Have any boys shown any interest in you? Yes. What kind of girl are you looking for?
Първо трябва да е красива, трябва да е честна и най-важното да се обучена.
Do you like the idea of bidding on a girl?
Харесвам много, ама такива са нашите традиции и няма как.
Okay.
Жениши за мен.
You don't like a strong woman? I want all my independence. I want to travel everywhere I want in the world. Nobody's ever asking me where I am, what I'm doing for life. As soon as I walked in, I started surrounding me, asking how much I I feel fundamentally uncomfortable with women being sold and bid on.
So I want to speak to Vera to find out what would actually happen if a suitor bids on one of her daughters today.
Тук не може да се само може да го поискам, не ли?
Speaking to Vera, it's apparent that the bride market is more like a massive speed dating event, rather than the forced marriage market that the media reports. Just before the market finishes, I managed to catch up with Rossi.
Do you think that you'll find a rich husband today?
The girls seem happy to have made it through the day without being sold off. Even Vera doesn't seem too bothered and accepts the tradition is not as rigid as it used to be.
Is this market different to you when you were younger?
I can't forget that these girls are being raised to serve future husbands instead of pursuing their ambitions. But the bride market ended up being less disturbing than I feared it would be. Perhaps this is just a Kalaiji's way of hanging on to their traditions, their pride and identity in an ever homogenized world.
Okay, hi everyone. It's 11 o'clock, and so I don't forget, let's do the smart attendance. And let me screen share the smart attendance screen and start attendance. And the number is 714. The number is 714. 714 is the number. And so if I go back to stop share, and number 714, and let me just type that in. The number is, the smart attendance number is 714. Okay. Okay, so that's done. And today's our short class, and so you know your midterm is due on Saturday, tomorrow. And so if we go and let's see if I can, I think I've already got that up. So we go to the class and assignments, and you can see that the first draft is due tomorrow morning. And so it says here, explain whether or not Europeanization will lead to a European identity becoming more important than existing national identities for the modal citizen of the European Union by the end of the 21st century. So 80 years from now. And so make sure, again, you use and cite information from at least 3 different chapters, from chapters 1 through 10 of the book. Make sure you cite the information. Make sure, you know, the final draft shouldn't be more than 500 words, plus or minus 10%. And well, I haven't really talked too much about citation styles here in the class, but if I were to screen share, let me see if I can find the citation style sheet. And I guess maybe I have so many files here that I wanted to show. Here's the citation style. So let me open that up and let me go back to screen share. And so you can see this is the different types of citation styles. I don't really care what kind of style you use. I just wanted to show you that this notion of using and citing specific information from scholarly sources is necessary in scholarly writing, right? You need to support your arguments and claims and points with evidence, and that evidence has to be information from scholarly sources, particularly, namely from the textbook from those chapters that we've been reading 1 through 10. And you should tell me where the information is located. Yes, yes, you have a question? Yes. Yes. Getting some kind of reverb. So maybe I'm going to have to mute everybody. Okay, I think it stopped, but okay, so back to the citation style sheet, and let me see here. You all are muted, I think. So if you're not muted, ask your question. Otherwise, please mute yourself so that so we don't get the feedback. But so the citation styles, you know, they're different types. But you know, when you use information from the textbook, make sure you provide the page number and the author or chapter where that information is located in the book, so that I know specifically which chapters you're using for information in order to meet the requirement of using and citing information from at least 3 different chapters, from chapters 1 through 10. Okay, and then again, I asked you to sign up for a conference session in the class. Let me see if I can find that now. And I go to Drive, and I have to see if I can open that up. And so here is the conference session and sign up sheet. And let's see. So let me go back to Zoom and go share screen. Modal citizen is just your average, your typical citizen. The typical citizen, the most common type of person, the most common individual citizen of the European Union will feel more European than German or Italian or French. Modal is another word for typical, most typical, right? And so I don't care what kind of citation format you use. You can use any kind of citation format. I just would like you to make sure you indicate to me, show to me where the information you are using to support and develop and refine your own points, where that's located in the textbook, right? In our textbook here. So where is it located in terms of the page number and the chapter number of the textbook, right? So you can do it in text, or you can do it in a footnote in the bottom, whatever. I won't count those footnotes as text, as words towards the 500 word limit. But you know, I mean, I keep repeating this point, right? I have to write papers too. You write papers, you write paragraphs. I have to write papers. I have to write paragraphs. I just finished a paper yesterday that I've been working on for months and sent it off, and so I'm still recovering from that. You know, and I have to, every time I make a point or a claim, I've got to prove it, and I have to prove it by providing information from other scholarly sources to support my claims and points. So I have to do the same thing I'm asking you to do as part of my job. So, you know, any kind of, that's why you know, don't just give me your opinion. If you just write your opinions, that's not scholarly work. You know, your opinions are just opinions. I don't want opinions. You want to make truth claims. You want to make statements of truth, and you want to persuade me that those statements that you make are true. And you try to persuade me by citing specific information from scholarly sources to support as evidence your claim, to persuade the reader, the scholarly reader, that your claim is true. It's truth, not just your opinion. Okay. And I might not believe you, but you have to try. I mean, I do the same thing all the time, right? So, okay. So I started if there are other questions, you can try to chat me or ask me. But I started off early, 20 minutes before the start of the class, by showing you that charming little video from Vice about the Roma, Gypsy Roma family and clan in Stara Zagora in Bulgaria, as a way to give you some kind of indication of what Bulgaria is like. Bulgaria is according to the metrics, for whatever they're worth, it's the poorest country in the European Union. Of the 27 member states, Bulgaria is the poorest. Bulgaria is also supposedly, according to different metrics and measures by Transparency International, the most corrupt, or the country with the biggest corruption problem in the European Union among the 27 member states. Again, those are statements or statistics given by different organizations and evaluators. Part of the problem with those statistics is that so much of what's going on in these countries is not recorded or is not measured. So much of what is going on is part of, for example, gray and black market economic activity that people are not reporting to the government. So, you know, how valid are the statistics when we say that, for example, Bulgaria is the poorest country in the European Union? You know, I mean, statistics coming out of Bulgaria, of course, we might be more willing to accept that we can't accept their statistics because they're a young democracy coming out of communism and still struggling. But of course, we saw a big problem with statistics and the validity of statistics in Greece, right? And Greece has been a member of the European Union for 40 years, and their statistics were poor. So as indicated, for example, in the fact that we really were not clear or not, it was not convincing their statements about how big their government budget deficit was. Big corruption problems in Greece. And they're a country that, like I said, has been in the European Union since 1981, when it was still a European Economic Community. And so, but you're reading this week about Poland and Bulgaria. And it's interesting to compare Poland and Bulgaria and Greece also because Poland, in a way, is a country which is, of course, more hostile to its communist past than Bulgaria is. Poland is a country which, generally speaking, collectively speaking, you find more of a resentment and hostility towards the communist system that was enforced on Poland when the Soviet Red Army invaded Poland at the end of World War II on the way to Berlin. And that makes Poland different from Bulgaria, because in Bulgaria, there's a different perspective on communism. The communist regime in Bulgaria, generally speaking, is not dismissed or rejected by Bulgarians as somehow among your typical modal Bulgarians. It's not rejected among your modal Bulgarian as somehow an illegitimate Vichy type regime that was imposed by a foreign power that did no good for Bulgaria. They don't view it that way. Poland, you're more likely to run into people in Poland, as I said, who view themselves as the Christ of Europe that's been sacrificed by the rest of the European community repeatedly through its history. That's one of the great nations of Europe. That's one of the largest nations in Europe, not as large, obviously, as Germany, but, you know, about the same population as Spain. And they're more likely to reject the communist era as an era in Poland's political development, more so than Bulgaria. Bulgarians have a more complicated, more willing tolerance to accept that Bulgaria under communism achieved something, that Bulgaria became a modern country. It has a legacy that's negative, but they do not reject communist legacy as having been something that did not modernize the country. There is a, and this is important for understanding different political behavior in Poland versus Bulgaria, right? Because Bulgarians have a more complicated understanding of their history. For example, one of the major parties remains in Bulgaria today. One of the major parties continues to be the Bulgarian Socialist Party. So we just had elections in Bulgaria a couple weeks ago on April 4th. There were elections in Bulgaria, and still one of the main parties is the Bulgarian Socialist Party. So I should share the screen, of course. Let me open up that file, which I'm trying to show you here. Here's a report on the Bulgarian elections, and I'll post this file, of course, on the material site of the Cyber Campus, and it gives you a statement about what were the results of the election. And let's see if I can find it here. There is a party led by a famous Bulgarian comedian and television star. His name is Slavi Trifonov, and he formed a political party reminiscent of Silvio Berlusconi in Italy and Donald Trump in the United States, taking control of the Republican Party, and Beppe Grillo in Italy forming the Five Star Movement. The top media entertainment personality, Slavi Trifonov, Mr. Slavi Trifonov, formed a party in Bulgaria. And in the elections, the name of the party is There Are Such People. That's the name of the party. Got little less than 18% of the vote. The right-wing Democratic Bulgaria party in the parliamentary elections got almost 10%. And what does it say? Oh, and the Bulgarian Socialist Party got 15.1% of the vote. So it came in second, the Bulgarian Socialist Party. And this is 30 years after the fall of communism. The Communist Party of Bulgaria became the Socialist Party of Bulgaria. And it's still a dominant party that elects, the president of Bulgaria, a person by the name of Radev. He's a Bulgarian socialist. They form governments, they lead governments. Compare that, for example, in Poland today, where the Socialist Left Alliance Party, the SLD, is the old Communist Party of Poland, which was formerly called the Polish United Workers' Party. That was its official name. It formed the SLD party, and that party, according to the reading that you had on Poland in the textbook, is no longer represented in the parliament, in the Polish parliament. It's gone from the Polish parliament, even though that party in the 1990s elected Kwaśniewski as the second president of Poland after Lech Walesa was president for 5 years, and he fell away. And the Socialist Party in Poland, it produced at least one president. It produced government prime ministers, but in the latest elections, it's disappeared. It's considered to be a party that is rejected by your model Polish citizen, is not worthy of their vote. But you don't see that in Bulgaria, and so there's a difference in this attitude towards the communist era and the communist norms and ideals which communism imposed on Bulgaria or enforced in Bulgaria are still accepted in many ways as being acceptable, as legitimate, as valid, not to be rejected as a foreign implant that the Soviet Union imposed on Bulgaria. Bulgarians are less likely to react that way to communism. So consequently, those people who are former communists who then became new politicians in the new political system, who transformed from being communist figures to politicians in the new Bulgaria, in the democratic Bulgaria, or those people that use their political connections under communism have been able to become the business elite in Bulgaria. They have a stronger position in Bulgaria than they might in Poland, and their authority and their acceptance of their authority is stronger in Bulgaria, even as the European Union is attempting to Europeanize Bulgaria, which is more of a challenge in Bulgaria insofar as the European Union is in conflict with these old communist era norms and attitudes which communism enforced in Bulgaria. And whereas in Poland, Polish nationalists on the right, the Law and Justice Party, they pick and choose what kind of Europeanization they want to adopt, of course. Like, for example, they don't want to give rights to LGBTQ people, and they're trying to make abortion illegal, completely illegal in Poland. So they pick and choose those European ideals, but at the same time, they very much want to be part of the European policymaking, European Union alliance. And so they are appealing to Poland as part of Europe, has a strong emotive force in Poland, which is usable to reform Poland, to make Poland strong and nationalistic and prosperous. So the Polish economy performs much better than the Bulgarian economy. And aside from the Bulgarian economy, from the Greek economy, you read in the chapter on Greece about the difficulties Greece is having adapting to European Union standards and policies. So its economy is doing remarkably poorly, despite being in the European Union for 40 years. So And so, the question emerges as to why this difference. And there's so much to cover. I think one of the reasons why there is this difference is because Poland was more politically mobilized and active when communism came to Poland. It would be rejected as a foreign implant that the Soviet Union brought, because Poland was more politically mobilized than Bulgaria was when the Soviet Red Army came to Bulgaria in the end of World War II. I've showed briefly these kinds of diagrams in class. So this is the representation of the population of Poland or Bulgaria or the United States or any country, right? And the people above this line are politically aware. They're aware of the fact that the world changes and people make this world, that institutions are the creation of people. They are aware of those institutions, and they believe that people can choose and make their reality, versus these people down here. These are traditional people. These are people that are unaware of politics, or unaware of the fact that there is a world, a social world that extends beyond their family, extends beyond their village, that there is a thing called Bulgaria or Poland or Russia or China or Korea or United States, and that these decisions made in Tokyo, Moscow, London, Washington, Paris, Berlin, Brussels, that these have an impact on my life, on your life, right? The people above this line know that, right? These people are fearful of change, are aware of change and fearful of it. These people are aware of change and favor it. These people are unaware of change. And the point I'm trying to make is that when communism came to Poland and Bulgaria, Poland had more of its population politically mobilized, that they understood what Poland was, and they understood what the Soviet Red Army was and what the Soviet Red Army was doing to them, which could have been something else. It could have been a different situation. It could have been, ideally, World War II could have happened in a different way or not happened at all. And the point is that they rejected what was imposed on them. But Bulgaria, when the Soviet Red Army came to Bulgaria, Bulgaria was more traditional. Less people were politically aware in Bulgaria than in Poland at this time. Say, Bulgaria is more like this, okay, in terms of the percent of the population is politically aware. And that means that when people in Bulgaria today, Bulgaria is down here along with the rest of Europe, right? That almost everybody in Europe and the world, in fact, is now politically mobilized, is now politically aware, right? So we can make that point, but this line moved down. More and more of the population became politically aware in Bulgaria. Under communism. They became modern under communism. They became politically aware as Bulgarians under communism. So they have a more complex understanding of what the era of communism gave to Bulgaria. And the communist period is considered to be a legitimate period in Bulgaria's history of national development. It's national history, right? Polish nationalists, in contrast, like the Law and Justice Party, they deny that the communist era was a legitimate era in the history of the development of the nation of Poland, typically. But Bulgarians know. So here's a cute little indicator of that. I have to show you this. Somebody posted this on my Facebook page yesterday, and let me go to my Facebook page and show you this. I have to make sure to show you this screen share. Somebody posted this from Bulgaria, right? This is, you see here, this is in Sofia. Here you see, this is a little shop for food, a snack shop. A skara means grilled food, grilled meat, grilled bulgogi, right? And here you see somebody posted here a mimic, a mock of communist era propaganda from the communist era. And you see the young man looking to the brighter socialist future, wearing the red scarf of the young pioneers. It's sort of like a communist era a youth club, young pioneers, and he's holding a banana, right? A banana, like a dole banana, like a dole banana. And the words here are 30 years without a banana deficit. 30 years without a banana deficit. So 30 years since the end of communism without a banana deficit. And that's highlighting that at the end of communism, the communists were claiming they were developing the country. They're making Bulgaria modern and developed. And in the 1980s, Bulgarians began to import bananas. Bananas, right? This exotic fruit from the tropics first appeared within Bulgaria under communism in the 1980s. And it was considered to be a luxury, this type of fruit. And so then, of course, I remember, I told you, I was at the American University in Bulgaria for 15 years, from 1994 to 2009. And so when I got there in 1994, and we would have some kind of social event at the university, and there would be food to eat, right? And the Bulgarians, when they saw bananas, they would all get a banana, even if it was a formal event where people were wearing suits and ties, and you would see them standing around the men wearing their suits and ties, peeling the banana and eating the banana, you know, because this is a luxury food. This is considered to be, you know, a delicacy, right? And so this little picture is making fun of that, is aware of that, right? That, wow, you know, we were so impressed when communists gave us bananas. And now here we are 30 years later, and we have all the bananas we want. You see, again, the young pioneer with the red scarf that they always used to wear. So you would never see something like that in Poland, right? Because they reject, they're more likely in Poland to reject communism and as having generated anything good for Poland. Even if they do like some of the elements of communism in Poland, they won't admit it. You can't admit it publicly. But in Bulgaria, you know, bananas, they gave us bananas. So that sort of illustrates, you know, the mindset. And by the way, Bulgarians are very well-educated people. They're like Koreans in a lot of ways. Insofar, for example, as they've always recognized through their modern history that the way for advancement in Bulgaria is education. So they spend a lot of money on education. Like Koreans, they will, if they have money, the parents will send their children to private tutors. They have these tests, like in Korea, that determine what university you're going to go to, that are so important in their life, right? And of course, the big problem in Bulgaria is that it's poor, and people, particularly professors and teachers, they're state employees, they're employees of the government, and since they're employees of the government, their salary is very, very low. So they can't live on those salaries. So they have to do other things to make money. And they do tutoring, and they do other jobs. And, you know, that's a comment somebody would made to me. If you go to Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, right, you know, everybody, it's the most developed and advanced part of the country, the most wealthy part of the country. It's the capital of the country. And people that are ambitious, they have many, many different jobs because they can't make enough from any one particular job in order to get by and to meet their standards and aspirations, because they feel that they are Europeans, like Italians and Germans and French, and the European lives like an Italian or a German or a Frenchman. And that means you have to have money, but you can't have money, but it's so difficult to make money in Bulgaria legitimately. And so it's so difficult that the population of Bulgaria is dropping. I mean, at its height, Bulgarian population was close to 10 million people. Now it's around 7 million. Can you imagine that? How much the population has dropped in Bulgaria? Because people have gone and moved away. 12 to 15% of the population of Bulgaria left Bulgaria, went to Canada, Germany, United States, Australia, to make money. Even here in Korea, I haven't checked in a while, but there's a restaurant, Zelen, in downtown Seoul, in Itaewon, behind Hotel Hamilton, called Zelen. And the young man who owns that restaurant, he told me there are about 70 Bulgarians living in Seoul, 70 or 80 Bulgarians, but that was several years ago that he told me that. That's the context. And of course, we're already running out of time here. So let me go to the notes. I just wanted to highlight, you know, these differences in rates of development, and that Bulgaria, you know, is later in terms of this mass mobilization of the population becoming politically aware. You know, England and France are among the first communities to have 100% of the adult population become aware of the potential for change. And you know, that leads to that awareness, which emerges from the shift in a society from ascription as the basis of status. In other words, your status and dignity status within a society is ascribed to at birth. It's given to you. You can't change it, right? So like a woman is below a man, typically in traditional ascriptive societies, most places. All right. And it's not earned. It's just ascribed that a woman is supposed to be subordinate to a man. That's tradition, right? But a modern society is a society in which your status in society and the respect you get in society is based upon your achievement, what you have achieved, what you have done and achieved. And those are two ideal typical poles. And ascription never completely goes away, even here in Korea, right? We all know that, for example, Korean doctors are not supposed to tell, or not legally allowed to tell a pregnant woman what the sex of her child or unborn child is, because of the fear that in the past, of course, that something bad might happen to that unborn baby if that baby's a girl, right? So there's still that legacy of old traditional feudal medieval thinking, traditional ascription-based societies towards achievement-based societies. And so when you have that shift in society from ascription to achievement as the basis of status in that society, people become aware of the fact that the world changes. People become ambitious. People they dream dreams. You heard all of that in that video, right? Don't you have a dream to go to school as a girl? Or do you follow tradition and be sold at a bride market if you're a gypsy girl? But once that awareness of change happens in society, people become politically participatory. They become aware of the fact that people make this world, not God, not Allah, not people. And they want to participate in making this world. So they want to become politically participatory. Public opinion emerges. People become aware of politics and they pay attention to politics, right? And they want to participate in politics. They also acquire large identities. They go from being members of a clan or a village to becoming Bulgarians or Koreans or Chinese or Russians or Germans or Italians or French, because those people all seem to share a common fate, because they share a common culture or language or territory. They also demand reform and change in society. We want standard rules and roles for everybody. Sort of makes sense, right? If we're going to evaluate people by their level of achievement, then we all have to agree what the rules of the game are by which we're competing and achieving, right? And particularly tradespeople lead this change process. And a fourth factor is elite alteration. Traditional leaders, elites, clan chiefs, sultans, and pashas and princes and dukes, and Yangban are replaced by guerrilla fighter unit leaders and teachers and professors and trade union leaders, right? And the first three are inevitable. This happens everywhere. And it happened first, as we already mentioned, in England and France. These countries occurred later during the Cold War. During the 20th century, Korea would be here also as well, about this time after 1950, right? Korea would be somewhere here, I think. Right, and this process is inevitable. But what except for the elite alteration. So if the traditional ruling elite adapt to this process as they did in Britain, then the old Yangban aristocrats can become living embodiment symbols of the British nation, the monarchy in Britain, right? And the United States is interfering in the Arab world to keep the House of Saud and the other ruling sheikhdom houses, ruling aristocratic, feudal, tribal chiefs in power in the oil sheikdoms in the Persian Gulf. And then there are four different community bases for nationalism. We see here, right, this shift from parochial to large groups, including national groups. They can be racial understandings of your nation, ethnic community, shared notions of what defines a Bulgarian. A Bulgarian includes very much the sense that a Bulgarian is somebody who speaks Bulgarian and has Bulgarian Orthodox Christian religion. Ethnic community, shared culture, territorial dimension. This predominates in American nationalism and nationalism in the Western Hemisphere, where you have immigrant societies, colonizer societies, overwhelming the local populations, coming in from Europe and also from elsewhere, but first from Europe to create Argentina, Brazil, United States, Canada, and so on. Territorial definitions of who your nation is, and religious notions that Osama bin Laden was an Islamic nationalist. He wanted to unify all Muslims from North Africa to the Philippines in one big Islamic state to liberate them from domination and oppression by the others. And so we briefly talked about this, but the point is this comes later to Bulgaria, and Bulgaria becomes politically modern under communism, and then there are differential rates of political awareness in these countries, right, among the different ethnic groups within them. So if I share screen and I go to, let's see if I can find that document that I just opened. Where did it, is that it? I think that's it. Maybe, let's see, is that it? Yeah, ethnic groups, right? Ethnic groups that you have different ethnic groups. So here is a state. Here would be in Bulgaria. Let's talk about Bulgaria, right? These would be the Bulgarians, the core group. B, usually it's the largest group, the dominant majority. It's typically in Europe, the state is named after. So Bulgaria is the Republic for the Bulgarians. France, the Republic of France is for the French. Germany's for the Germans. Italy's for the Italians, right? Switzerland, what is Switzerland? Well, Switzerland's a territorial-based nation with different ethnic groups in it, French, Italian, German, and others. But typically this is Bulgaria. Advanced minorities would be Jews and Armenians in Bulgaria. They're more advanced in terms of going through this change process we described earlier. And they will be stereotyped or viewed with suspicion. The way Chinese minority is viewed in Indonesia and in Southeast Asia, they're in this category as well. These groups are the so-called backward groups. These groups mobilize and develop later through this change process. And these will be the Roma, the Gypsies in Bulgaria and Romania, and African Americans, United States, here as well. These would be, and these would be stereotyped as backward and childlike, needing to be civilized by these groups. Of course, in empires is the way the Japanese tend to stereotype the Koreans to self-certainly justify colonizing them, that they're supposedly bringing civilization to Korea, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And they're stereotyped as lazy, like children. They don't like to work. That's the stereotype that they're lazy, that they're fun-loving, that they like to play, like to party. You know, the standard stereotypes of gypsies in Bulgaria. And the Roma gypsy minority is the biggest minority in Europe. And they're disliked and stereotyped negatively just about everywhere, right? The place where they're least suffering abuse is Hungary, but they're disliked in France, they're disliked in Italy, they're disliked in Bulgaria, even though at the same time, if you're a Bulgarian and you get married and have a Bulgarian wedding, what do you have to do? You have to make sure you hire a gypsy music band to play at your wedding, because the gypsies are the best musicians, and everybody knows that they're the best musicians because that's what they do. They party. So, and they are the most poor. They are stereotyped as tendencies towards criminals, towards the way, again, you have these conflicts in the United States between the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant majority in the United States and African Americans, and they respond with the Black Lives Matter movement and trying to demand respect and dignity and integration to the core group. So, and so we're running out of time here, and so let me go to another. Let's see, somebody sent a chat. So let me go back to the corruption. Corruption's a big problem in Bulgaria, right? And so this is a report from the summertime of last year about another corruption scandal in Bulgaria involving Ahmed Dogan, who was the leader of the Movement for Rights and Freedoms Party, which is the de facto ethnic Turkish party. The Turkish Muslim minorities about, well, the Bulgarians don't really want to count them accurately, but there's at least 5%, if not more, of the population are ethnic Turks. And they get about 10% of the vote regularly in the elections. He's no longer the leader, but he's still a powerful figure of the Movement for Rights and Freedoms Party. And of course, he got busted for corruption, for stealing state park property for his own benefit. And he remains Bulgaria remains relatively peaceful. It has been called the Switzerland of the Balkans, unlike Yugoslavia, which disintegrated into war and violence and destruction that caused thousands of people to die and horrible atrocities and hundreds of thousands to leave. Bulgaria has been peaceful despite this history of ethnic conflict between the Bulgarians and the Gypsies and the Turk minority. There was a genocide against the Turkish minority in Turkey over 30 years ago, at the 1980s, when the communist government in Bulgaria attempted to force the Bulgarian Turks to change their names from Turkish names to Bulgarian names. And 300,000 Bulgarian Turks left the country and went to Turkey and were basically forced out of Bulgaria in the 1980s at the end of communism, as the communist regime was attempting to appeal to Bulgarian nationalism to strengthen itself as the communist system was disintegrating. And then after communism fell, some of the Turks came back, but a lot of them stayed in Turkey, but they were given dual citizenship. So they have both Bulgarian and Turkish passports, and they can vote in Bulgarian elections. Bursa is the big center for Bulgarian Turks in Turkey outside of Istanbul. And but Ahmed Dogan is the leader of their party. And Bulgaria's got a problem with corruption, but it's been remarkably peaceful despite this terrible history of ethnic cleansing and genocide. And people wonder why. And one of the reasons why Bulgaria has been peaceful, and this is not emphasized enough in the chapter reading for this week, is because the Bulgarian Turkish Party, the Movement for Rights and Freedoms Party, is a kingmaker. Because typically that means that Bulgarians support the main left party and the main right party, and the Movement for Rights and Freedoms balances between the two in forming coalitions in parliament to create majorities that then form a government. And so parties on the right and parties on the left both court and maneuver to get the support of the Movement for Rights and Freedoms Party in order to be able to form a government. And I think I'm sharing that screen. I just want to make sure it's coming up, right? They maneuver to form this government and with this Movement for Rights and Freedoms Party. So, and that has been one of the reasons why the Turkish minority has had, as a group, remarkably peaceful relations with Bulgarians who, by their nationalism, identify themselves as who they are not, as well as who they are, right? So a Bulgarian, as I said, is Bulgarian Orthodox Christian, speaks Bulgarian, and a Bulgarian is not a Muslim, and a Bulgarian is not a Turk, because they were under the part of the Ottoman Empire for 500 years, right? But we haven't had violence in Bulgaria, and that's one of the questions that I've been working on in terms of trying to explain why has Bulgaria been remarkably peaceful. I mean, and that's something to note, because you only hear about the bad things about Bulgaria, how it's the poorest country and the most corrupt country. And, you know, Ahmed Dogan is the leader, was the founder of the Movement for Rights and Freedoms, and he's corrupt as well. But, you know, when you read the chapter on Bulgaria and you read the chapter on Greece, you know, you have to wonder, how do you explain the fact that Greece has been part of the European Union for 40 years, and it is as corrupt as Bulgaria in a lot of ways? Does this, so I ask you to please respond to the following statement. The broad similarity in Bulgaria and Greece regarding corruption is proof that culture is more important than institutions in explaining political behavior. What do you think? How do you respond to the statement that the broad similarity in Bulgaria and Greece regarding corruption is proof that culture, Balkan culture, that they were all under the Turks for so many years, so many generations, that's made them hostile to obeying law because they associate law with the imperial occupier, whether it be the Ottomans or then the communists, that the Turks, that they don't have a tradition of respecting law because law is associated with the imperial occupier. And so culture is more important because Greece has been part of the European Union in the West forever, since the end of World War II, and Bulgaria was communist, but they still are terribly corrupt, despite the very different histories after World War II. So is it true that culture is more important than institutions? So let me go back to the website, of course, if I can find it here, let's see if I can find it here and share. And so we go back to, let's see, I think, I see if I can find it here. Let's move this out of the way. Okay, so we go here, And then we go here. Okay, so we're doing the screen share. So let's do the vote on the survey. And so, so please vote and go now and vote on this question. Is culture more important than institutions in explaining political behavior in Bulgaria and Greece? So please vote, and we'll devote 1 minute to this. So you see the screen, 2 people have voted. Is culture more important than institutions in explaining political behavior? Whether they're communist institutions or they're capitalist, democratic institutions, culture. And of course, that's what anthropologists say. That's what my friends say who study the Balkans. See, it's Balkan culture. It's a legacy of a Balkan history. And institutions are less important than culture in explaining the fact that Greece is still terribly corrupt, still unable to generate valid data, and it's been part of the European Economic Community since 1981, and part of NATO long before that, right? So, I guess that's it. Okay, and then another survey vote on your question regarding the debate topic. And so we go to the debate topic, and again, share screen, and let me see if I can back to where I was. Okay, so let me see, share screen and share, and then we have this survey. So to South Koreans, Poland and Bulgaria show that the old communist elite have become the new elite. So please vote. Yes, pro, yes. One minute. So you can see I'm refreshing the screen so we can see what the vote totals are. Okay, and so we just have 5 minutes left in the class. So you think that, yes, the class tends to think that, that in fact, yes, culture is more important than institutions in explaining political behavior. Okay, okay. Yeah, okay, it's an interesting question. And so in the time remaining, let's do a debate. And so again, I'm going to just assign you to 2 different groups, and I'm going to let you decide what position you want to take. So we create and open all rooms, and so let's have the last person, Chung Song Hyun and Chon In Hyuk, respond to whether or not the group is pro, con, or cannot decide on whether or not the old communist elite has become the new elite. So I'll let you decide if you're pro or con. I won't assign you to pro or con. So please join the groups, and Chung Song Hyun will speak for room 1, and Chon In Hyuk will speak for group room 2. Chon In Hyuk? Okay, so you speak for group 2. So decide if you can, in the time remaining, what your group's position is, pro, con, or you can't decide on the debate topic. So communicate with each other and help Chung Song Hyun prepare a statement, and Chon In Hyuk prepare a statement for your group.
네.
새로운 엘리트로 또 등극을 했다는 거죠. 그 커뮤니스트들이.
예.
찬성이.
그렇죠.
그
그랬는데 교수님이
맞아요. 맞아요.
다른 세력에 대치하는 것까지도 그냥 그러니까 엘리트층이 바뀌는 것까지를 그냥
Professor,
Yeah.
do you hear me? I'm Seokji Yoon, and actually I checked my attendance, but I think due to the Wi-Fi error in the dormitory, my attendance is not checked, and I'm taking this lecture by my data.
Okay,
So
send me an email, okay?
okay, thank you.
Okay, group one, let's hear what you have to say. Chung Sun Hyung, what did your group come up with?
So we're pretty much split half and half in it. So like the people that say pro, we said that, you know, as time, even though time flows and time goes by, the traditional elite will still be there. I mean, like, even though the whole society changed to inscription, but inscription means that you know, people that have the resources to stay within power are still in power.
Uh-huh.
But on the other hand, you know, the rightists, they're starting to grow back up.
Good, yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's not black and white. There's no right or wrong answer to that.
That's
So we're kind of
great. That's good. Thank you very much. I love it when I learn things. You sparked me to think about this in terms, we talked about fascism last class, right? Yes. And how this fascists rely on traditional values to challenge the ascription of the old communist elite. You know, they're always there, just assumed to be there because they've always been there since 1945, that achievement orientation manifests itself in nationalism to challenge those people, right? And challenge their status as being undeserved because they served the communists or they're descendants of the communists. So yeah, I mean, that's really something for me to think about. Okay, thank you. And Chon In Hyuk.
yes, we are the pro of this subject, and because in communists in Poland and Bulgaria also just keep the politics power in their country, but not as a real the communist, as a social democracy group.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's what the European Union wants. They're afraid of this fascist tendency, this authoritarian populist tendency in these countries, particularly Poland, right? So they want these pro-change people who want achievement to achieve towards Europe, and Europe is this social democratic ideal. Pan-European, social democratic, not authoritarian populist, social democratic, liberal nationalist ideal. And that's what they want the achievement orientation to go towards. But you got to be equipped for that, right? You've got to speak foreign languages. You've got to have a college degree, right? And those people, they are benefiting from Europeanization and globalization. Yeah, people like you. The globalization and Europeanization is your oyster, right? You guys are going to do so well. You speak English, you're going to get a college degree, and you love globalization, but there are lots and lots of people in the world who are afraid of globalization, who think that the world is leaving them behind. Poland for the Polish, Italians for the Italians, France for the French, not for the social democratic, cosmopolitan, pro-LGBTQ, liberal elite. Thank you. Okay, talk to you next week. See you on Monday. Bye. Anything else? Any questions? No? Okay.